I am Brad Keelor. He is Kenichi Soga. Coming up next on Director's Cut, find out what it was like to write a book with the late, great Jim Mitchell. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, every 7 days, I sit down with a different GI member who has all kinds of stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, but all of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this interview today, use your favorite web browser and head over to geoinstitute.org. There you will find out so many things about us, including we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and you always do, you keep coming back every week, viewers, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Coming to us from the East Bay, where he is a faculty member of the University of California Berkeley, it is Kenichi Soga. Kenichi, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Well, Brad, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
We are going to have an amazing time today, as we always do. We've got 10 questions. 2 of them are the same that we ask everybody, and we have to start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Yes, so I'm a professor of civil and environmental engineering at UC Berkeley. I'm also the director of Center for Smart Infrastructure here at Berkeley, which is supported by many infrastructure owners in the East Bay and California, but also nationwide as well, like U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
That was so fast. I wasn't even ready to come up with a follow-up question, but that's okay. I mean, can you talk to us a little bit more about the center, since we're right here at the intro? I mean, I guess you hit on a couple of the funders already. What are the major activities that you guys work on?
Yes, so this center came up when I was at Cambridge University. We had another center called Center for Smart Infrastructure and Construction. And then when I moved here, I should make it simpler. So I made it a Center for Smart Infrastructure, CSI, so that you will remember because you know these TP programs before, I guess. And so CSI is really supported by the California infrastructure owners. Water industry over here has supported to kickstart this center. And it's really to innovate this infrastructure engineering into the next level. Looking at more data, understanding how we deal with the infrastructure, and then how we can serve the community to provide better infrastructure. And we deal with aging infrastructure, so maybe I'll talk about that later on.
So now California has the luxury, I guess, but also the foresight to fund things like this. And it's not just in civil engineering. They do it across the sciences and across engineering. What was that experience for you like working with the state to get that started up? I mean, and was it exactly what you thought it would be, or did it go differently?
I think the way we work with the industry has been similar in the UK, but then here in the industry, as you know, California has earthquakes, wildfires, and other natural hazards. And obviously, infrastructure owners understand that risk. So trying to discuss how we can move forward, it's always easier than the other infrastructure owners who don't have natural hazard as a top priority. So that gives us the opportunity to innovate first. And once we show that innovation can be useful, then we can use that technology to other parts of the nation. And that's what I'm thinking, what we want to do.
Perfect. And you did get Cambridge in there. We're going to talk a little bit later about your time at Cambridge. We can't leave that out. We have to get to some of the fun questions first, right? And so, Kenichi, we're going to hit you with this one first. What's your standard coffee order?
Oh, well, I'll just order cappuccino all the time. I wish I could do like, can you have this one, this one with a cappuccino or whatever you say at Starbucks or other or these coffee shops, like what my daughter does, but I can't do it. So I'll just say cappuccino, please.
And what is your coffee habit like? Are you even a 1 cup a day person? Do you drink it every day? How much?
I just drink too much, and actually, I'm a person who can sleep even with caffeine in it. So that's my probably the only good thing about me is that I can sleep quickly.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as a kid, my parents would make a pot of coffee between the two of them and have it with dinner and then afterwards, and then
Mm,
go to bed like three
yeah.
hours later. And I never figured it out, but it is an amazing talent, and I kind of got some of that too. I can do
Yeah,
it
yeah,
too.
yeah.
The third question in Director's Cut is always the research question. And
Mhm,
you
mhm.
gave me a great line that I can use to introduce what we're going to talk about today. And that's the new generation of the observational method. That's where we're going to go. And you had 4 different steps for this for us. Can you walk us through that?
Yes, so it's really about infrastructure. When we design our infrastructure or geotechnical structures, we design for 100 years. Often that's how we teach. Let's go for 100 years design. But then if you talk to infrastructure owners, we already see our infrastructure lasting for 100 years or go to 150 years. So they want to prolong the life of infrastructure. But at the same time, when you see like Washington, D.C. or the Berkeley 30 years ago was totally different from now. And now it's going to be totally different from after 30 years. So the demand changes so rapidly, faster than how we design our infrastructure. So the assumption you made when you design 400 years may not be a right thing anyway. So the point here is that if we assume that the infrastructure is not rigid but be more adaptive to changes, then we need to start thinking about how to design our infrastructure so that if demand changes, it can be adaptive. So in order to do that, you have to understand how really infrastructure is performing. So not just finish off by design and construction, but it's about maintenance, how we reuse the material for the next life of our infrastructure. And that's where we need to think about how we understand the real performance. But we do have sensors. We do have our new data analytics coming in, which is so exciting in our profession, and we're already using those. So what we want to do is to understand that, but then when you start to understand, it's not understanding how it behaves, but you have to learn, and then you have to sort of anticipate what's going to happen, and then you start to adapt. And that's what our geotechnical engineers been good at. We get new challenges, but we have to monitor. So what I'm trying to do is the observational method was to look into that and then adapt at the end. And that's where I want to what Professor Ralph Peck said a long time ago in 60s. This is the observational method. Now the new generation comes in is because what we tend to do in our design is that we are being a little bit conservative. And then we have a conservatism comes in, and then you do your design because that's what we should do as a practice. But at the same time, I'm trying to promote, which Professor Peck said, when the design details are not very clear in the 60s, he said, think about what is the most probable condition that may happen, in a sense that you're 50-50. So if you're really designing something, you should not just design and conservatively and then, okay, it will be okay. Do one more thinking and say, what may happen? What is your 50-50? And if it's always going to be a good 50, so when you monitor and then you say, oh, my design is always good in my better 50, it may be that you're over designing. If it's always that sort of other 50, meaning that you're not really designing in the right way. So rather than just designing it and leave it and then see how it goes, we can start monitoring to see what was your 50-50, and that allows us to learn better. And that is what I call new generation of observational method. And some of our colleagues are starting to think that way, and we want to promote that.
So, well, first of all, I have my Ralph Peck bobblehead here next to me.
Oh,
And since you brought
nice.
him up a couple of times, he has to make an appearance. The follow-up question I want to ask you is about aging infrastructure. And we'll stick to North America here because, you could look at Europe, you can look at Asia. Some of that stuff is truly ancient. But yeah, we were having dinner with my parents last fall, and we were in a restaurant. It was in an old house that was built in the 1740s. And that's relatively common out here. How much have you guys been able to take away? What lessons have you learned from some of this aging infrastructure within the US? And really, it can go to any of those steps that you had for your observational design method.
Yes, so aging infrastructure is a challenge for us. And our vision is that if our new generation, next generation say, I don't have to worry about aging infrastructure, it's not aging. That would be nice, isn't it? So in order to do that, you really need to understand what's really happening on aging infrastructure rather than saying, oh, there's aging infrastructure. What shall we do now? So it's really about thinking from the design, construction, maintenance, looking after that, and how can we use new technologies to make sure that aging doesn't age in a certain way or age nicely. So when it age nicely, when you think something need to be changed, you can change it easily. So my point is that aging is really aging because it's difficult to change.
Mhm.
And I think we can change that feeling of by doing something differently, like reusing the foundation, maybe one thing that geotechnical engineers, sometimes we have to face with reusing foundation because there's no places to put new piles.
Yep.
Yeah, so then it's forced to do that. But then if we can be a little bit more proactive in trying to say, let's reuse foundation, may be a good thing for sustainability.
Oh, that's a great answer. So thank you for that. And actually, I don't know. We might get into a little bit of this later on. We'll see where
Mhm.
the interview takes us. That's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
the way
yeah.
it goes, right? But we have to get back into the fun questions. And one of my favorites, I've asked a couple of people this one, and it's always good to think back as you get a little bit older about fashion trends that maybe you experienced a little too much. We'll call it that. Kenichi, what's the ugliest piece of clothing you've ever owned?
That's a great question. And then I was thinking about it, and all the clothing I had 30 years ago looked terrible. And then the clothing I probably wear now, it looks good, but then probably after 30 years, it looks probably terrible. So my point is, the point is that if everything that going at 30 years is so changes. So that is similar to what I was trying to say with the
Yeah.
aging infrastructure, right? The demand changes so rapidly, so it looks not right. But then we have to be adaptive. So I'm not answering your question because I'm not really sure because I probably had many of those. And then when I look at the photos, everything looks ugly. But then probably now I may be all right. But then after 20 years, when I look back, I'll probably say the same thing.
I gotta say though, I have a 15-year-old, and about 2 years ago, she started asking my wife and I, what the oldest things we had were, what shirts we still had from the 90s or pants or anything. She took them all, and now they're part of her
Oh,
everyday
right.
wardrobe. It's kind of horrific how the 90s have come back. Like, I mean, I guess I hung on to that stuff, so maybe I thought it was going to happen. So I don't know, but it with your foundation reuse, that's
There you
foundation
go.
reuse
Yo,
right
so
there.
you are adaptive, so that's really good. Adaptive clothing.
You are one of it's more than a few people, but it's not that many who have been inducted into the National Academy of Engineering and the Royal Academy of Engineering. We're gonna put you on the spot. We're gonna make you pick a favorite. Coolest recognition, Royal Academy or the National Academy?
Oh, that's a good question, and I can't answer that because I think both are good, excellent. I have to say, recently I gave a ranking lecture, as you may know, and then my former students we got together, and they gave me a plaque with their names on it, and probably that was one of the most recent one I felt really good.
Can you talk a little bit about, we've had people on here who talk about the NAE induction, and I've been able to go a few times, so I know what it looks like. What is the Royal Academy induction like? What is that process like? What happens?
So I think the process is similar in terms of nomination and all these things, and then it's a very similar way that they select you, and in terms of getting in, I think it's very similar in terms of having all these people get together and celebrate. The only difference is that the UK have a royal family present.
Yeah. Did that make it feel different to you? Because it was always a little bit weird. I told you before, and many people know this, I worked for the UK government for several years. This is an awful secret that I'm divulging here. When the Prime Minister would come visit, nothing really happened. Like, we would go have an all staff meeting with the Prime Minister and we would get to ask questions and it was informal. When any member of the royal family was in DC, it was a completely different deal. I couldn't park my car in my regular parking space. Sometimes my part of the office wouldn't be open for a little while. There would be like a lottery to meet the member of the royal family. Did you feel like there was a member of the royal family there during the induction?
Oh, well, it's always special to have somebody that you think, oh, as a UK culture, perhaps that is very important as part of the culture, and therefore appreciate to be part of that. And I think that was a good thing. And I can mention like this, what is the difference? Probably that may be the difference. And that's appreciating different cultures of two different countries. And I'm sure US have other things that the US NAE event was very grand. I was very touched and had a lot of sort of seminars or sort of workshops, that kind of stuff coming in, whereas War Academy induction was a little bit more, okay, let's try to have an induction and then sort of black suit and all these things. So it just appreciating different cultures, which I really enjoyed.
The question I always like to ask whenever we talk about this with anybody is, have you ever taken the time to look at the list of names, either for the NAE or the Royal Academy, and think about seeing your name on there with all the other names? How crazy is that for you?
Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe I should go back and see the list.
I can't even. It would blow my mind. That's why I
right.
always ask.
Oh, I see. Let me think about that, but I don't have an answer for that because it was not the list of the questions I was trying to
Well, yeah, we
answer.
can't prepare you for everything, Kenichi. The other question we ask everybody when they come on the show is about their history with ASCE and GI. So how did you first get involved with ASCE and then with GI?
Yeah, so I did my undergraduate and master's in Japan, and then I came here to do my PhD at UC Berkeley, and that's the time when I joined ASCE student chapter and then start going to geotechnical conferences. I don't think Geo-Institute was there at that time. So I think it's before Geo-Institute came up. I don't think it was an institute. Maybe it was something.
Yeah, it was the division or whatever we used to call it.
Yeah, that's right. But then I can see how the Geo-Institute been promoting as an institute. I think I admire that particular, and I'm trying to do my best to contribute. Obviously, being one of the editorial board member of the ASCE Geotechnical and Geo-Environmental Engineering has been a very important for my life in my early days of career. So I remember when I was doing that, I was also doing for Geotechnique and then also for Soils and Foundation, looking at different journals by different societies. And that's how I start to understand how the academic life works. And then I'm still doing some editorial board member. I'm not sure I'm doing very well, but I'm trying my best to be part of it.
Well, we haven't fired you, so it must be going okay, right? Do you have any particular memories of your time as a student with the ASCE chapter? Were you involved in Concrete Canoe or anything like that? Well, I
Right. I
guess you
was
were
a
a grad student. Most
grad
of that's
student.
undergrad.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So I was more going to the conferences. I remember there was a one conference was in Boulder, Colorado. So I remember driving from Berkeley to Colorado, Boulder overnight, driving with my friends to join the conference. So that was one of the memorable time that I had with my friend driving to Denver, Boulder.
That's a good one. I like that. And we still hear about students doing that. I think the Illinois students drive pretty much every year, no matter where
Oh,
we
right,
are. And it's
right.
crazy to me. They drove to LA and had all kinds of crazy things happen to them on the way and on the way back. Whew,
Yes.
I'm amazed. So even that one, Berkeley to Boulder, that is no joke going through the mountains. We always ask questions on Director's Cut. I don't know if they're emotional questions or how I'd classify them, but maybe that's a fair way to say it.
Mm.
I'm always curious. I think like heights for me, like I can be up at a
Mm.
really high elevation or on a ladder or whatever. It doesn't really bother me. It scares a lot of people. Kenichi, what is something that scares a lot of people but doesn't bother you?
It bothers me, but I'm not much scared of failures. So you do something and then just fail and then say, oh, I can accept it and then move on. So maybe that's something that I may be okay because I had a lot of failures, mistakes.
I mean, that's a great one though, because you need to be resilient. I think,
Mm.
especially a lot of times, you've spent your entire career in it. Civil and geotech tends to be a pretty cautious, conservative discipline. I do you feel like you developed this, or have you been this way your whole life?
I'm not sure. I think I was a little bit more cautious when I was younger, but then I guess in academia, you get a lot of failures. You get rejected by your proposals, you get rejected, all these things. And then sometimes that is a common thing as an academic. And I think when I was at Cambridge, we were in the Department of Engineering. So there were other disciplines next to your office, for example, talking into having a tea together. So maybe that allowed me to be a little bit more adventurous in terms of what I do. But then often the case, even though I say excited, sometimes I get turned down, which many have happened many times. But then I said, okay, let's move on.
And we try to do that. I mean, I always tell my team at GI, we expect to fail 75% of the time. That if you
Yeah,
are successful 25% of the time, you're
right.
probably doing pretty well. And you just have to
Mm,
make sure that that 25% of the time you're really successful. That's the only
mm,
difference, right?
mm.
So now you've mentioned Cambridge a few times, and this is the part of the interview where we're going to talk directly about it. It is, I mean, it's kind of this nebulous thing to a lot of Americans, right? Like Oxford and Cambridge have all this prestige and pomp and circumstance about it, but at the end of the day, they're research institutions. They're big universities. A lot of students graduate from there the same way as they do from any other university and figure out what they're going to do with their lives. You had the privilege, though, of being at Cambridge for over a decade, I think. What do you miss the most about it?
That's a really good question. I was thinking about it. And then obviously the 800 years history of Cambridge has that particular way of academia. And maybe that's something I really miss in terms of how people think. And that's embedded in the culture of how people operate in terms of academia. But that is how the UK British system works. When I was looking for a job after finishing a PhD, my first thing was, okay, I'm going to find an academic position, perhaps in the US. So I was always looking for that. But then one day I was walking along the corridor in Berkeley, in this particular Davis Hall, and I saw a small advertisement saying that there's a teaching position opening at Cambridge University. And I looked at it, and the deadline was day after. So, and that's a time when we didn't have emails much. It said
Mhm.
I sent my application by fax, and then that's how it happened. So many things happen as not something I planned, but it's just a coincidence that really. But when I visited them, I really felt, wow, this is a very interesting place that I can learn many things differently from what I learned from UC Berkeley. And what I really miss by thinking about it is really interaction that I had with my colleagues. But I do have the same thing over here anyway. But it's not that Cambridge was important. It was really the colleagues I have at that time working together was my special thing. And I'm not sure I missed, but then it really was an important part of my academic life.
I think one thing I always heard from people is that summer in Cambridge was like this magical time. Did you have a favorite time of year or any holiday or anything that was just more special because it was Cambridge?
Yes. So when I went for an interview, it was a springtime. One of the beautiful time in Cambridge is around that time in the springtime. And it's like, wow, this is really nice place to go. And then I arrived in November. The weather was not as good as I thought. So that was something that I was a little bit fooled by the interview that it's going to be a nice weather over there, but then it was different. But I think I really enjoyed the different seasons that they had, and I can't say, but British summertime is really, really nice. I agree with you.
And you did do okay that first day when the sun went down at 3:45 or whatever it was.
Yes, yes.
It's a little shocking, I think.
Yes, yeah. So I got used to it, as you may know.
And so from Cambridge, you went back to Berkeley, and you've been there since. When people think of Berkeley, I mean, at least within civil and geotech, right? There's just, I mean, I guess people think of other things too, but there's this long list of names that they associate with it. We could just name them all right now if we wanted to. We're going to talk about one specific one here in a minute. But fill in the blank is this question. Following in the footsteps of all the Berkeley civil and geotechnical legends makes you feel what?
Well, feel good that, and then also motivation to be innovative. So if you look at any great geotechnical programs, they change the subject every 10 years, every decade. So they are always innovative. And I was lucky at Cambridge, it was like that too. And I think Berkeley is also like that. We had different great colleagues in the past who really innovated and make sure there's a future in geotechnical engineering. And I think trying to find out the right thing for the future generations to do something, be innovative in geotechnical engineering. And I just feel that I got to do that.
That's amazing. So I said we were going to talk about one specific one, and it's Jim Mitchell. We have to talk about Jim Mitchell. We couldn't go through this whole interview without doing it. You wrote a book with him. This is the one we teased at the beginning of the interview. For you, you can walk us through the whole process of doing this, right? But what was the most memorable part for you of writing a book with Jim?
So if you know Jim personally, you know who he is, how great person, how he's caring to the others, he's fair to everyone, that kind of a feeling. Just talking to him is always a good thing to make me feel that, oh, I want to be like him. So working on book, of course, I suffered a lot to read many things. When you write a new edition, it has to be 30% more than what you have. Yep. So you got to put new stuff. And that is sort of a lot of effort, but at the same time, talking with him once every week or something like that, that makes you feel that, oh, wow, this is a great moment I'm having in my life, talking to somebody who I admire, and then doing something together. So it's, and obviously he is innovative. You can see his work, and if you look at his older edition that I was not involved, and then when you read it, and then when you think about what's happening right now. Wow, he was pioneer. He think about that when he was at the age of associate professor and assistant professor, and then sort of comes back. But then we're keep on innovating to go to the next level. But the fundamentals that he thought was so interesting, and then just listening to him, how he was thinking like that, makes me feel that, oh wow, that's good. And that is the moment that I feel importance of working with him is not just learning about his academic experience, but also learning from as a person how it would be, how it will be good to be like him.
So I think, it's always challenging to work with anybody on a project, right? Because you're bringing together two different styles, people think differently. But a book is almost like taking that to another level because it's going to be out there for a long time. People are going to look at that for a long time. What do you feel like were the biggest differences between you and Jim as you worked on this, and how did you guys work through it?
I think it's the way we sort of listened to each other, and then we never had any conflicts. It just one thing adding, and then you add something that you're good at. So the point is that we've always found what we are good at, and then trying to bring it together. And you may know that we're having a new edition coming up soon. It's going to come out in summer, and actually we added a new co-author, Catherine O'Sullivan from Imperial College. And Catherine was exactly the same. She brought something new, and then we said, wow, let's add those together to make it happen. I think the point is that we never had a conflict. We sort of assumed we will all contribute in the right way, and that's how it went.
That is amazing, and good to get a little pitch in for the book there at the end too. You made it through all 10 questions, Kenichi. You did a great job. You made it through the follow-up questions. Everybody always does, but we still tell people good job because it's a big deal. For our viewers, if you liked what you saw and you're here at the end, so you probably did, of course, click like, subscribe, get notifications, and yes, like I said at the beginning, we'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Kenichi, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It was a great one.
And for everybody out there, we'll see you with another new episode of Director's Cut next week.
Well, I'm very biased because the reason I went to Berkeley is because I read Jim Mitchell's papers when I was a student in Japan. And I said, wow, this is really interesting. And that's why I decided to go to Berkeley. I applied to Berkeley, and luckily I got to get in. But it just reading his papers, which are different, I felt different from the other papers I had read, really motivated to go to UC Berkeley. And I'm very lucky that I was able to work with him, and he picked me as a student as well.
Do you remember, though, meeting him the first time? What was it like?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I don't really remember. I was like a graduate student saying, wow, this is Jim Mitchell. Yeah, it's not like a first time we sort of, I say, oh, this is Jim Mitchell. This is the person it's a time that we didn't have emails, right? So I wrote a letter to Jim Mitchell, like what you do with emails right now. I want to be your student, or I want to go to UC Berkeley to do my grad study. So I just wrote a letter, and then a letter came back and say, yeah, please apply, which I think everybody does it. But as a young student, that was very special.
Director Zakato no jikai wa Soga Kenichi-san desu.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's easy.